with Laapataa Ladies, I mean, the concept is pretty interesting and scary at the same time, right? Like a man who gets married and he's on the train going back to his village, and the bride is in her outfit, and there's a bunch of other married couples with similar bridal outfit, and they get switched on the train, and you don't find out until you get to the village.
I'm not sure how often it happens, but it has definitely happened. I mean, there have been newspaper articles in certain parts of North India. This is the custom that the bride is. The wedding always happens at the bride's house, and this thing that the bride always has to have that long veil, which is only lifted once she gets home. This idea of the veil covering the face, which is typically associated with Muslims, is actually very common in India in all communities and in non-Muslim communities. It's a cultural thing.
What a great little film, which is
Thank you.
Laapataa Ladies, directed by, I always forget her last name, Kiran,
Kiran
what's
Rao.
her? Rao, Kiran
Rao.
Rao. Yeah, Rao. And now available on Netflix. And amazing film. I had seen the trailer a while ago, and because there's just so much stuff out there, it was just something kind of that went off radar. And then one evening, my wife and I were trying to figure out what to watch, and
Yeah.
it popped up. And as soon as we started watching it, like we just couldn't let go. An amazing film. Thank you so much for being part of it. I mean, huge part of it.
It's great to. It actually the reactions have been unreal to this film. The kind of responses we've got from audiences, it's really special. I mean, it happens very rarely.
Well, I think the reason it happens very rarely, and I'm going to be a little bit blunt about this, is very rarely honest films are made, not just in India, in Hollywood as well, everywhere. And this came from the heart,
Yeah.
right? It was just very, very genuine, and another film this year that I saw. I'm a huge fan of Vidhu Vinod Chopra. Very similar, 12th Fail.
Oh
That
yeah.
actually did really well too because it's a common man story and it's told with such an honesty and purity, and it's family. Like that's another thing, right? It's a family viewing film. Like
Mm.
you don't have to worry about anything, and so people appreciate that and the simplicity of life and everything.
So
Um,
as
uh
I have this very good filmmaker friend who would always tell me that a film has to be deceptively simple.
a
I
film
mean,
has to be what? Sorry.
deceptively simple. It looks
Okay.
simple, but it isn't, of course, in the way we do it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, when I say simple, that the amount of hard work that goes behind it is uncanny,
yeah.
not just from a production, but pre-production, post-production. I mean, it's every stage is just amazing. And I think one of the things that really got to me were the performances of these actors, and that's a
Yeah.
testament to the director as well, right? That they're not A-list actors, but they were amazingly real as they can
Hmm.
get. Just tell me about how you got on board on this film, the initial journey of you getting a call, or whether through your agent or directly through Kiran.
So, yeah, it was directly Kiran's office. So, as an editor, I mean, I've been working for many years, but I've kind of, ended up in this space that, I mean, it's tagged as indie, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I very rarely work on these big blockbuster films. So, and I'm happy in this space. I like working, on the sorts of films that have come my way. And of course, a lot of the directors I really admire, luckily for me, are here also making these kinds of films. So, you have a wish list, people you really want to work with. And
Yeah.
Kiran has always been on that list. I've always, I mean, I know she made just one fiction feature before this, but she has done
Yeah.
a lot of other work and she's been part of the film industry for a very long time, and she's always been somebody I have wanted to work with. So it was great, to get this call and say like, look, Kiran's making a film, and are you free to work with us? So yeah, that's how it started.
Her other film was, I think, Dhobi Got, right? If I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
yes.
Yeah, I have to rewatch that. It's been a while since I watched it. But that I remember when I watched it, it was a really good film even at that time. It's just been a while. So, but with Laapataa Ladies, I mean, the concept is pretty interesting and scary at the same time, right? Like this is just to kind of for the audience, it's basically a man who gets married and he's on the train going back to his village and the bride is in her outfit and there's a bunch of other married couples with similar bridal outfit and they get switched on the train and you don't find out until you get to the village. I'm assuming this happens quite often. Would it be right to assume?
I mean, I'm not sure how often it happens, but it has definitely happened. I mean, there have been newspaper articles. It's been in the news. It's not very common, but I mean, yeah, in certain parts of North India, this is the custom that the bride is the wedding always happens at the bride's house, and then the bridal party goes back to the groom's place. In this case, the bride and groom, like the rest of the party, has left and they're going back on their own after finishing some prayer. So, yeah, and this thing that the bride always has to have that long veil, which is only lifted once she gets home. This idea of the veil covering the face, which is typically associated with Muslims, is actually very common in India in all communities and in non-Muslim communities. It's a cultural thing. Uh, so it happens a lot, and yeah, the red dupatta is always the same. It's this red, gold, intensely kind of thing. So I mean, of course, there's creative liberties taken
Yeah.
and to make the story work. But, yeah.
Right. Um, yeah, in terms of your role on the film, were you there on the set at any time, whether it was just for observation or whether it was cutting dailies, or your kind of part came after everything was done?
So normally I do get involved in the films that I work on as far as possible from the scripting stage itself. I start reading and kind of interacting. But in this case, the project came to me after it was already shot.
Okay.
Uh, so they had finished shooting. They shot, I think, towards the end of the kind of COVID, uh, once the lockdown had lifted. But people were still in masks and stuff. Uh, and they shot the whole film. They had an on-location editor, and there was a cut that I think so. The editor was originally supposed to work on it, kind of opted out. So it came to me after that when there was a kind of, I wouldn't say an edit, but like it was a kind of full lineup of the entire film, all the scenes kind of roughly cut together. So there was a lot to watch, and it was extremely long. And Kiran called me in, and we watched it together. And she said, I just feel like it's not landing, and so it needs to be reworked. So at that stage, I said, I mean, I agreed. I said, like, I feel like every cut needs to be changed. So I told her, give me a couple of months. I'm going to go back to the footage and cut it from scratch and give you another, interpretation of it. So I was given all the time I needed, and I made a full cut. Then that was like my first cut. Then Kiran and I sat together and basically wrestled it to the ground. She is a very hands-on director. She herself has come up through the ranks. She started as an assistant director herself. So she has a very granular understanding of, filmmaking, and she's very interested. Um, so it was like everything we looked at through a magnifying glass. There were every take, every line, every cut. It was wonderful, truly collaborative. It was really great.
That's amazing. Working with Kiran, Jabeen, you know, she obviously is a very talented storyteller. I mean, it shows in both the films that she's done. And you said collaborative, and that's a very must thing for cinema. I mean, and even in a company, like, when you succeed as a company. But in cinema, it's such a collaborative effort. What is there's so many emotional scenes in the film, whether they're funny or whether they're, sad or somewhere in the middle. Um, what sort of drives her based on how much interaction you had with her in telling the story that she wants to do? Like, what are some of the pieces that emotion that she wants to evoke, or is she trying to evoke a certain emotion during the cut? Because the film is rewritten in the editing stage. Just working with her, what is she trying to get at? Like, what's her end goal from what you saw collaborating with her?
I
Besides
think
besides
that,
making a great film,
yeah,
of course.
yeah, yeah. No, I would say that the goal, the attempt, that what we were working towards was to tell the story, and it's a story that means a lot of things. It's not just funny or just entertaining or just to make people cry or just not just a romance. There's a lot of, I mean, for the lack of a better word, I say messages, but they're not to be delivered as messages.
Yeah. Preachy,
You know,
not preachy
they're
too.
yeah. So I think to keep that light touch uh, was was very important. It's one of the things for sure. And you're just crafting it in great detail. I mean, it's so personal, but just to hit each note correctly, to make the funny scenes really funny and to I think that this was not just a process in the edit, but it was something that had begun much earlier in the shooting and probably even when the actors rehearsed their lines. So it was kind of a following through in the edit of something that was already kind of cooking.
Mm,
I didn't get the sense that we are struggling. I got the sense that we're kind of just mining the footage for the right moments to make the story work.
right. When you were editing it in those 2 months, right? I made this mistake once. I mean, I try not to edit my own films now. Just, in the beginning I did, but it's during COVID. Um, I was kind of helping on my edit with an editor. Like, I was just kind of guiding, giving her all the notes, and she was guiding me, and we were working together. And one of the things that I did during COVID was, because everybody was in that zone of, being locked in, I watched a lot of terrible movies. When I say terrible, I mean, like, without a plot, and, just kind of like just escapism. And I didn't
Mhm.
realize that it actually had an impact on the work that I was doing, because I started, translating all that into the work. And then
But I mean,
I
that's not always a bad thing, Deval.
no, but it was just the films were very serious. They were human rights, uh, like in the dire situations,
Yeah,
life and death. And
yeah.
I'm watching movies like Fast and Furious and, stuff like that. But then I saw, like, obviously, then I started watching Breaking Bad and, like, really good narratives, and that had an impact in the other way. So my question is, in those 2 months when you were editing, did you not watch anything, or did you try to get the inspiration, or did you go outside, in the trains or villages, or just to get some inspiration? What was that process like, if there was anything like that?
No, I mean, I mean, 2 months was just when I did my first cut. We spent like the better part of a year editing the film after that. So it was a very long process. But uh, I mean, you watch what you watch. It's not. I don't. I actually avoid. You know, other references. I'd like to just get into the material and treat it for what it is. Like, what are these rhythms? What is going on in this frame? What is this allowing me to say?
Right.
rather than how somebody else done it. I think how somebody else does things just kind of feeds into your brain anyway. We watch so much.
Anyways, yeah, yeah,
You
that's
know,
true
it
too.
always does. The other thing that happens with me is I cut a lot of fiction. I also cut a lot of documentary films and very serious political documentary films and, activist films sometimes. And I found this is why I'm saying it's not such a bad thing because I found that the energy of one kind of crosses over into the other, and it, there because fiction has a certain kind of crafting, and in documentary you are crafting it, but you're also concerned with themes and bigger ideas and what people are saying, how they are speaking, how they are represented, so many things. So I find it plays together.
Interesting. That's an interesting angle. Maybe I would need to try that down the road one more time. Um, you said you did have done documentaries and narratives as well, right? So, from what I know personally, but not that much, but I've read that it's very difficult, not impossible. It's very difficult to come from the documentary world. No, to go from the narrative world into the documentary world, and it's easier to come from the documentary world into narrative because narrative is very scripted and it's kind of concise, and documentary is kind of like everywhere with a vision, of course. What is your experience like in doing both?
Now, fiction is much easier, narrative, as you say, it
Yeah,
is much easier. Uh,
yeah.
and yeah, it can be so much fun, as I said, that kind of crafting, you know, just like just trying a lot of fun stuff, which yeah, documentaries don't. But in my case, so I went to film school where most of my, and this is many years ago, I finished in 1995, uh, where most of my training was working on narrative fiction films.
Mm.
And as soon as I left film school, I ended up with a bunch of friends who were all making documentaries. So I kind of cut my teeth on that. So I've kind of always managed to do both. I've never looked at it as problem.
No, that's really good that you were able to do both because they both are interesting. I mean, I say this to people when they ask me about documentaries that for me, it's like I know where the story starts. I know where the ending is going to be likely. Obviously not sure if it's going to be the way I would like it to be because it's a real story in real time. But how do you get there? Excites the hell out of me, but scares the crap out of me at the same time, right?
Yeah,
That whole journey
absolutely.
because the story is going this way, that way, and you don't know which way to
Mm.
hook, and it's fun at the same time. It's exciting.
So I think that, but this kind of playing with the structure, flipping scenes about, it is something that we do with fiction all the time. Laapataa
Hmm.
Ladies, I mean, if you see the script as written on paper and the film that was finally out, we did quite a bit of that. And I've done that with every fiction film, every fiction feature that I've edited, where you kind of you are saying, okay, this is how it's written, but this actually doesn't work if it follows from here. And often, if it's too long, then you're like, okay, we need to get rid of this scene. But then the next
Yeah.
scene doesn't connect up, so can we put it somewhere else? And the songs in Lapata Ladies, we changed the placement of the songs uh,
Okay.
many times, played with
Uh,
a lot of stuff. So I think that in that sense, yeah, all filmmaking uh, is storytelling, and you end up having to kind of use all
okay.
these skills.
Yeah. Jabeen, how did your journey start? Like, what was the catalyst in you becoming who you are? Was it a movie that
It's
you
a big
saw, or
question. Uh, I I started wanting to be a writer, like a journalist, not a
okay?
film writer, but like a most yeah. And I even worked briefly in a newspaper. But somewhere along the way, I just I felt that cinema is more my thing. And I went to film school. But, editing is something that requires a certain kind of personality. Like you have to have this ability to, sit alone in a room for hours, look at the same thing over and over. You make sense of it, kind of have that head to patiently tease out structure and, cut little bits out, put them somewhere, save them somewhere. It's like you have to have that brain, right? That organizing brain. I found that I have that and I enjoy that much more than being a director running around on a set yelling at 10,000 people, like, or whatever it takes, like a general marshalling troops, right? That's what directors
Right.
have to do. I mean, the best of them, however nice they are as people. So, yeah, that's not me.
No, that
So,
makes sense. But what was the movie that you may have seen that took you towards cinema? Like, was there a film that you saw or an interview you
uh,
saw or you heard?
so I actually, so I did my BA in English literature. So always, narrative in that sense, and that
Mm.
world of the imagination.
Storytelling. Yeah.
You read a book, and so that has always been very close. I mean, I've always been very close to that, in my head. And I actually went to media school first before I joined the FTII. I did this kind of mass media course. It's an excellent full time 1 year course. It still happens in Bombay. Uh, it's called, it's at the Sophia Polytechnic. So that
Okay.
has various components. Journalism was one component of the course, cinema was another. And every week, once a week, we used to have film screening. And these were like the classics of world cinema and also Indian films. There was a 16 projector in the classroom, all the curtains would be drawn. They would get prints, 16 prints from the National Film Archive of India. So all the like textbook cinema 101 films, I actually watched them. And they would also invite various contemporary filmmakers to come and screen their films and have conversations with us. So I think by the end of that year, I was like, I said, okay, this is actually much more my thing. It's
Right.
just a world that opens up. There also used to be a lot of film societies in Bombay at that time. So, like you go to the Russian Cultural Center and you're watching Kozantsev's Hamlet and, Andrei Rublev. And it's so many things, it was great. And this is all on the big screen, right? Film prints. This was like in the 90s.
Of course.
So,
Yeah.
80s, late 80s. So it was great.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. What
It just
who's one of
happened.
who's a director that you admire, whether it's in Hollywood or in India, that you would love to work with, even if it's a far-fetched dream?
Well, I mean, I'm very timid about such things. I wouldn't dare like
Okay.
want to work like I wouldn't go so far as to say love to work with. I don't know, but
Okay.
a lot of yeah. I'll
I
tell
mean,
you.
purely from storytelling aspect, like Kiran Rao is an amazing storyteller. I'm not talking about status and celebrity and all that. I'm just talking about purely storytelling.
So I'll tell you like watch which have like really shifted something in my head. So one of them was Pulp Fiction,
Okay.
which
Quentin
really, when
Tarantino.
I watched it at that time, it again in the cinema hall on the big screen, and you're really like, okay, wow, I didn't think of it could be like this. I mean, I was very young then also, but something really changed something in your head, and you go from there. Uh, it's possible to do certain things. So yeah, the other one that really, I think some of Spike Lee's work really, uh,
Mhm.
yeah, really connected. I really connected with. Again, its themes and how they are kind of worked out in a script.
Right. I think with Pulp Fiction, one of the greatest things for me was the way the final scene, how it got connected to everything else. You know, the one in
Yeah.
in the diner. Like from an editing standpoint, I mean,
Exactly. Structure.
it's
Structure,
so
right?
beautiful. Yeah, it's so beautiful. I mean, you come to like, oh, okay, that makes sense that you could tell a story like that too, instead of, being chronological. Um, and going back to Lapata Ladies, was there, there's always stuff that you want in a film, but you have to take liberties to take it out because it doesn't connect with the basing. It could be a great standalone scene because of the performances or the dialogue. Was there one or few scenes like that that didn't connect, but they were great scenes nevertheless that could have gone in?
There were a couple of scenes. I mean, it's, so let me put it this way. Uh, when at the preview, the premiere screening of the film, right, there was this very lovely, occasion when a lot of invitees were there and the film was screened and very well received. And then somebody asked Kiran and I were, standing around together, and somebody asked us, so, when you release, will you have those deleted scenes? When you kind of release another version or DVD. And both of us looked at each other, and I mean, we really cut a lot out of the film, yeah. But we looked at each other and then we said, no, actually, there's nothing we'd like to put back. this
Yeah,
is fine. We like this. This is our film. So I'm very satisfied with what is in there. But yeah, there were a lot of the scenes were longer. There was
mm,
this, and the opening had much more. The journey of the bride getting to, you know, leaving her home, and feeling really sad. It was actually very sad when we started. Now it's like really peppy and, happy or
right.
excited. But it was a sad moment where she's crying. She's left her family. She's going off into the unknown. She's a sheltered child, name, but young
Yeah,
woman. And there's this scene where before they catch the bus, where they sit on the roof of a bus at one point and drive.
right.
So there was a scene at the bus station where there are these typical louts hanging around this group of young men who, Deepak tells her, I'll get you some water. And she's sitting there on a ledge with her gungat. And Deepak has gone off to buy some snacks and water for her. And these boys start singing, a song to kind of, like tease her, or, and she is petrified. And there was a shot where you could see her. It was a close up, and you could see her from inside the veil. The veil is covering her head, and you could see her kind of terrified eyes inside, and uh, and just she really doesn't know what to do. And you also get the sense of how unsafe certain parts of the country are, or maybe certain parts of the world are for women. What you feel. So yeah, that was actually a really nice moment, and that song was very funny. I mean, it wasn't meant to be funny, but it was kind of a very amusing kind of ditty they sing. So yeah, those things were nice. There was a extended song sequence on the river. Um,
Mm,
I mean, in another film, all that would have been beautiful. But yeah, eventually we realized, also through a process of a lot of screening to get feedback from audiences before,
right.
locking the edit. So we realized what's working. Sometimes the story tries to do too much, and that's kind of its undoing. Like then you're not effectively saying one thing, and you're kind
Yeah.
of trying to say 10 different things. So we kind of were able to narrow it down, and it was a collective kind of thing. So, yeah.
No, I genuinely felt, even now that I think about it, like I never felt that this scene is dragging because they were very
Mhm.
concise and to the point. And one of the things that I loved about the film, that I'm not going to give away the ending, is the arc of the policeman, the
Oh
guy
yeah.
who, right? And then I did not, because I was so invested in the characters in the movies, and that's a testament to the film, that I totally forgot about. I thought the protagonist was the girl who was not in the village, who was at the other location. Like that's what I was
Mhm.
thinking, that she is the main protagonist. But the
Mhm.
way Kiran and yourself, you guys turned the story on its head, in a sense that
Mhm.
it became about her, but when it became about her, it made sense that it was always about her. Not to take away from any other characters or performances. I'm just saying that it was just, I felt, because she was like the road to the freedom, right? Like how the story unveils. So I thought that was really beautifully done. Again, I'm just making these comments. I absolutely love the movie, and I've been recommending it to everybody among my friends and family circle that
Thank you.
watch it watch it with your kids, because it's the, even aside from the story, the simplicity of it, just the way the world is, it's, you don't see that nowadays, right? Like everything is like a rat race, and you're going, 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 and you're not figuring out where you're going. So it was really, really cool to see that. But yeah, it was. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'll probably check it out again in the next couple of years just to refresh.
Wonderful. Please do. Yeah.
Awesome. What's next for you now? Are you working on anything or something in the can?
Yeah, I actually just finished another fiction feature, but it's a very small film which is having trouble finding a release. That's the
Mm.
story of my life, mostly.
Welcome to the club.
And and there's a documentary film which is going to take a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, doing stuff. I mean, there were some personal reasons why also I decided to take it a bit slow, but it's just. I mean, this is a lot. Laapataa Ladies has just it's a lot to kind of. I'm happy to enjoy this.
Yeah. I was actually just looking at your IMDb. So did you work on Khamoshi with Sanjay Labansari?
I was the assistant editor. It was my first job.
That was a wonderful film. That was a wonderful film.
That and
Um,
I learned so much back then.
I'm sure.
It
I'm
was
sure you did. It's been great, and I truly pray and wish you the best. And I would love to chat with you again if there is any film that you want to talk about that you feel very, I mean, if they're all your babies, but at the end of the day, if there's something that you want to talk about, I would love to have you on again, because I truly enjoy talking to you.
absolutely. Do you do documentaries as well, or is it just a fiction feature? But it has to be
Um,
something that's released in the US so people can watch it, right?
Sorry, what was the last part again? Can you repeat that?
You do films that are released in the US so people can watch
Um,
from there.
they're actually, I mean, they're on different platforms. Some platforms are geographically restricted, but there are some that are
Hmm.
international. But the films that I've always wanted to get into narrative, and somehow I ended up doing social, political, human rights narrative
Hmm.
documentaries, like where you follow a
Hmm.
protagonist journey in real time. These are the posters, like, of two of my films: In Search of My Sister and Citizen of Moria. But they are available on Vimeo on demand to watch it outside of Europe and North America. So if you're interested in seeing them, I'd be more than happy to send you a link.
Please do, please do. I would love to, and yeah, I will get in touch with you. Let's keep in touch. If maybe we'll talk
Sure.
again.
For sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Jabeen. Thank you so much for being
It
part
was a
of it.
pleasure.